Hello, everyone. I'm Minesh Parikh from Kearney, and I'm joined today by Paul Hatch, former CEO of Teams Design Chicago and a member of the IDSA Hall of Fame. Thanks for joining us today, Paul.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Great
So
to be here.
thank you. Um, you've had a great journey leading Teams Design, leading an industrial design firm, as well as doing a lot of industrial design in your career. But now you're doing some interesting research. So maybe let's just start there as to your journey and what prompted you to go pursue research after having such a successful professional career.
It's a great question, and one that I ask myself every single day. But no, I think just thinking about the journey through industrial design, from studying and starting in Europe in industrial design and coming to the States 25 years ago, and then developing a team at Teams Design. Heck of a journey, but in doing so over those 25 years, I saw a change in the approach of industrial design as a whole. The approach that we took, but the approach of industrial design as a community, as an industry, changed. Before early 2000s, the focus of industrial design was very much on the skills of the designer, coming up with innovation. It's funny to think about now, there was a book that came out, a breakthrough book, called Innovation or Die, or Innovate or Die, which is laughable to think about now. How would that be a radical idea, right? It's completely accepted that companies need to innovate, otherwise they won't survive. Fast forward into the early 2000s, 2010, industrial design and product development was looking at experiences, looking at how do we make that joy factor go better. We started to look at journey mapping. We'd look at ethnographic research, going into people's homes, understanding how they actually do things, and how do I now create a new idea or a new product or improve what we have based on what we're seeing. The next phase after that, we saw human-centered design, user experience. Again, this is the industry as a whole, and of course the work that we're involved at Teams. But this also echoes my personal journey. And so we're going from the very macro level of looking at how does this one product, that is the statement of the company, of the brand, go out there to the market and say, hey, I'm the best thing ever. If you don't buy me, you're a loser, right? That was the old school approach of the 80s, the 90s. It's the statement of the brand, of the company. It is the best product out there. Buy it because it's the best. And then we get into the 2000s, where we're now looking at the user. What is it the user actually wants? And maybe we can come up with ideas based on that instead of what the brand wants to tell the user. So my focus went from the macro level to the user mass level. What is the biggest mass of users? What do they want? And I think a lot of the industry is still stuck on that stage, looking at how do I get them to everyone to love this one thing that I have as a company, be it a product, a service, or digital interface. But the industry moved on then through its understanding from human-centered design, user experience, to understand that the nature of individuals varies a lot. And in retrospect, we see that because a brand, a company will release 20 products, and they'll put the same time, energy, and incredible manpower, design power, engineering, everything into those, and only one of them really makes it, and there's a ton of flops, right? So it's still kind of hit or miss, despite all of the correct intentions to get there. And so we were aiming at a mass target. We've learned to look more individually at people to understand their nuances, but we found, again, as a design culture, we found that they're still very fickle. They're not very predictable. I give them one product, they love it. I give them the next one that's almost the same, they hate it. What's going on? How can we predict what they're going to like, what they're going to adapt How do we get them to like us as a brand, right? And so that brings me to my next stage, and I think where the industry as a whole is going, is to understand the psychology of what's going on there. Because individuals, maybe just going back a sec, if we want them to love something, people talk about love as being a very personal, intimate thing. Love is or beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right?
Mhm.
So it's that individualized. And that phrase talks about what one person loves, another person won't necessarily, right? That's been the truth for centuries. And yet we're running up against the same wall as if we learned nothing. However, under the complex outer layers of the onion that a person is, all the personal experiences that they have, their interests, the things, the relationships they've had throughout their life. Underneath that, we're kind of the same person in there, the same person that's been around for hundreds of thousands of years. People talk about it being the reptilian brain, right? Our more instinctual thing. And it governs emotions, your basic emotions there, which include love, hate, fear, the stronger elements. Those are the ones we've been trying to tap into by addressing the outer layers of the onion. And what I'm trying to do now is understand the inner layers of the onion, because that's the commonality between people. And so in my work in psychology, that's what I'm trying to tap into. What is that innermost part of a person, that where if I can communicate with that innermost person, can I build a relationship? Can I create love? Can I create a valuable connection with them that reflects also the outer layers of their particular life?
It's really interesting. So you hit on quite a few points and very much aligned with, I think, the way that PERLab and Teams even thinks, right? In terms of, a product that is good for the company, good for the consumer, good for the planet. And within the consumer part, the joy to love,
Yes.
right? And I would love to talk a little bit more about how do you get at that love part of it. To your point, you started tapping it in terms of the psychology, but we as humans, I think, we rationalize, right? But we make decisions emotionally, and then we rationalize them afterwards,
Yes.
to justify something,
Yes.
a $10 purchase to a $100,000 purchase, right?
Right.
You go out and buy a house, it's an emotional feeling that you have that says, something I like about this house. And then you say, oh, because it has this features or it has X, Y, and Z, of
Yes.
course I'm going to buy this now, right?
Yes.
So what are you seeing and learning, and how do you take that? And I want to connect that to what you said, which is those micro moments and those micro segments, if you will, rather than the mass.
Yes.
So how do we find that and bridge that gap
Yeah.
from mass to micro,
Yeah.
and from like to love,
Mm-hmm.
and finding that balance between emotion and rational?
Yes. Great. I think it's very astute of you as well to talk about how we emotionally connect with something before we rationalize ourselves as to why we like it. We're not very good at diagnosing why we like things. So we draw upon rational elements to do with money and to do with performance, productivity, and the things that are on the rational side, our prefrontal cortex. But before it goes to the prefrontal cortex for the rationalizing, it starts off with the reptilian brain, right? Damn, I love it. Why do I love it? I'm not sure. Let me think about that. So a good design, a good service, a product is obviously speaking to that part.
Mm-hmm.
To the second part of your question, then, how do we create those connections? I don't know. However, I think it does come. First of all, it comes down to understanding that it is emotion first in all the decisions we do, and that decisions actually happen in microseconds. They happen very, very fast. It was important for our survival, and therefore it's a hardwired part of our brain, that skips all sorts of other parts to make a decision. And what's interesting and may help understand how do I get into that emotion. What's interesting to me is that in psychology, it's only relatively recent that they understand that first emotions come first, but that the brain asks the body to make decisions for it. And of course, as Western people, we believe everything's the brain. We think of the brain in a jar type thing, and it can make decisions and so on. But there's a story of somebody who severed part of their spinal cord, and they went through operations. They were perfectly fine. They were operating as a normal person again, able to walk around and everything, except they couldn't make decisions anymore. They were not able to connect one particular area there. So in the day-to-day decisions, not should I buy that house, but should I stand or should I sit? Should I take a drink now or not? Should I push my hand forward or not? The poor person could not make any basic decisions. If they were told to do something, they could do it. They had all the memories, they knew who they were. But when it came to a simple decision, do you want to meet Monday or Tuesday? Lost. No idea. And so the brain actually uses the body as a survey. It quickly, in a microsecond, asks the body, how do we feel about that decision? And the body comes back, I'm okay. Or I'm a little sweaty, tiny bit here. Or my gut feels a little tighter, just that tiny bit. I feel uneasy about it. And so it's asking for a biological response to what we consider as being an emotional or rational decision. So emotion is also driven by biological well-being. So this is a bit of a longer circle here. If we think about recent changes, post-COVID, I think we're in the post-COVID era now, where we have become more sensitive to ourselves as individuals, not as consumers, but as people. We generally understand our well-being and the things that help us and don't help us some more. So if we are trying to reach consumers, I think now is a great time to go deep into that area of what are those basic needs that talk to a person's values and that person's identity. And not just prey on the other parts of the brain, such as fear and desire, but the true long-lasting relationships come through supporting a person's identity and also reflecting their values. And so this is the tail end of that circle. This is what a brand, a product, a service should provide the user. And the user needs this. The user will trust and connect with a brand or service that helps them with their own identity and their own values.
So I love the values and the identity part of it, because you use the product, it says something about you. I also use the word tribe as a way to think about it, right? What is the community that you belong in? And so it would be good to sort of, now let's take those elements that we've talked about and think about how does that translate into design of a product? If we can sort of put a full circle on this now. All the elements we've talked about, the emotion, the tribe, the identity, values, how do we translate it into a product design? How does it manifest?
Take the lowly coffee maker, right? The thing that we trust and use on a daily basis, or a number of people do in some way. There are different types and there are different preferences between people as to how they want their coffee. And I'd say these are outer layers of the onion there, as to whether it's espresso or drip filter, or how much and how often you drink and how much you consume. I think the inner layer comes down to what is it I actually want from the coffee, right? There is, in terms of identity, there is my community. It's accepted in my community that I drink a lot of coffee. In fact, it's even praised to a certain extent. There's a bit of a cool factor being addicted to coffee, oddly enough, right? And so your identity is reflected through drinking coffee. Biologically, there's certain needs you're getting from it. People psychologically think they're getting a wake up in the morning. They can't wake up without a coffee. A lot of that is biologically untrue. There's a certain factor, but somebody who drinks every day for a long period of time is getting no effect from the caffeine. They're only getting an effect when they don't have caffeine. And a lot of it is just placebo. But going back to the value of what we get from this, we get this warmth, we get a ritual from it, and we get something that we're in control of. I have decided how much coffee I have. I am in control of this experience, and it's for me, right? So when we look at a coffee maker, we look at it as a set of personal rewards of value, identity, and other ways, and not drip filter or espresso or whatever degrees it's cooking at. And so now, if I'm designing coming up with a new type of coffee maker, maybe it's not coffee. Maybe it doesn't make it. You know, I've got to ask the question, can I bring those rewards to somebody in a different way? And as a business, it would be awesome if I find a way of now providing those same rewards in a way that is financially more beneficial to me, making something unique that will be popular, costs less, but will be valued more, i.e. I can sell it for higher because it's creating a better experience by tapping into exactly what the person wants.
Yep.
So it's no new news to look for something that's low cost and high value, or something that's innovative. But I think what we're starting to realize is innovative doesn't mean it's different from the one before, right? We've spent almost 2 decades of doing that, right? Hey, something new, it's innovative, you've not seen it before, but it's not rewarding. It's not helping people's identity or value, and therefore you're not building a relationship. You're just good for a year and they'll replace you with something else. So if we now scrap what we think is a coffee maker, apply design thinking to say, okay, what is the real substance that I'm trying to fulfill with this new entity? You may end up with a coffee maker, but front and center is going to be the values that the user wants from that entity.
Well, Paul, I could continue talking to you for hours, and maybe we should find extra time to go much deeper into some of these topics. So thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you. It's very fascinating.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.